The massive silver vessel Peaceful Dawn drifted through the darkness of space toward the small blue planet. Ambassador Veltar stood on the bridge, his 6 tentacles moving nervously as he reviewed the standard protocols one more time. He had done this dance with 47 different species across the galaxy. The routine never changed. Arrive, announce superior technology, wait for the terrified locals to bow down and beg for mercy, then graciously accept their surrender. His aide, Krixna, checked the scanning equipment with precision. Ambassador, the planet shows signs of primitive space travel. They have exactly 1 vessel in orbit. This should be simple. Veltar nodded, his purple skin shifting to a confident blue color. Excellent. Begin Standard Intimidation Protocol 7. Full power display, weapons locked, demand immediate surrender. We should be done before lunch. Captain Kim Tae was drinking his morning coffee on the bridge of New Seoul when the proximity alarm started screaming. He nearly spilled his drink as he looked at the view screen. A ship the size of a small city had just appeared next to them, covered in enough weapons to level a continent. Well, Tae said calmly, setting down his coffee cup, that's definitely not from around here. His crew gathered around him, staring at the alien vessel with wide eyes. Dr. Park Min, the ship's scientist, was practically bouncing with excitement. Captain, this is it. This is what we've been waiting for. First contact with alien life. Tae grinned and opened communications. Hey there. Welcome to our neighborhood. I'm Tae, captain of this little ship. You folks want some coffee? We've got the good stuff. On the Peaceful Dawn, every alien on the bridge froze. They had expected screaming, begging, desperate pleas for mercy. Instead, they got a friendly invitation to drink hot brown liquid. Sir, Krixna whispered, I think their translation system is broken. They seem to be welcoming us. Veltar checked his instruments 3 times. Everything was working perfectly. Send the standard surrender demand, he ordered, his voice uncertain. The message appeared on Tae's screen, full of formal language about superior beings and immediate submission. Tae read it twice then laughed out loud. They want us to bow down and surrender, he told his crew. That's adorable. Should we invite them over for dinner instead? Dr. Park Min was already putting on his best diplomatic uniform. Oh please yes. Think of what we could learn from them. Their technology, their culture, their biology. Engineer Choi Won looked up from his repair work. Maybe they can help us fix that broken gravity generator in Section 7? I've been working on it for weeks. Tae sent back a cheerful message inviting the aliens to visit, complete with a dinner menu and suggestions for entertainment. He even attached a small video tour of their ship, with crew members waving and smiling at the camera. Veltar watched the video with growing horror. The humans were showing off their weapons storage like it was a gift shop. They seemed genuinely happy to see strangers with superior firepower. Their captain was grinning like a child who had just been given a new toy. This is wrong, Veltar muttered. Where is the fear? The begging? The normal response to overwhelming force. Against his better judgment, Veltar decided to beam over with a small diplomatic team. He needed to understand what was happening here. The moment they materialized on the human ship, everything went further wrong. Instead of silence and terror, the corridors were filled with music. Crew members were laughing and joking as they worked. When they saw the aliens, they didn't run or hide. They walked over and tried to shake hands. Wow, look at those tentacles, said a young human woman. Are they prehensile? Can you pick up multiple objects at once? That must be so useful for multitasking. Veltar's aide nearly collapsed from shock. They're studying us. Like we're interesting instead of terrifying. Dr. Park Min appeared with a huge smile and a medical scanner. Welcome aboard. I'm Min, the xenobiologist. Would you mind if I took some readings? Non-invasive, of course. I'm just curious about your physiology. Do those tentacles have individual nerve clusters? How do you coordinate movement with 6 appendages? Veltar found himself answering questions instead of delivering ultimatums. The human doctor was genuinely fascinated by alien biology, asking intelligent questions and taking careful notes. No one seemed afraid. No one was begging for their lives. The cultural dinner was a complete disaster. Chef Lee Hannah presented her finest dishes with obvious pride, describing each ingredient in loving detail. The bulgogi beef was perfectly marinated, she explained, seasoned with garlic and soy sauce and grilled to perfection. Veltar's species had been strict vegetarians for 10,000 years. The idea of killing and eating other creatures was horrifying to them. But Hannah talked about it like it was art. You kill other living beings and consume their flesh? Veltar asked weakly. Well yeah, Captain Tay replied, taking another bite. It's delicious. Want to try the kimchi instead? It's just fermented vegetables. Engineer Choi Won made things worse by casually mentioning his weekend hobbies. I love rock climbing, he said happily. There's this cliff face about 200 meters high near my hometown. Great challenge. Sometimes I go without ropes if I'm feeling adventurous. You throw yourself off cliffs for entertainment? Krixna whispered. Pilot Song Dabin joined the conversation. Oh, that's nothing. I race motorcycles. 200 kilometers per hour, sometimes more. The faster the better. Really gets your blood pumping. Veltar's tentacles were shaking uncontrollably. These creatures actively sought out danger for fun. They consumed dead animals like it was normal. They showed no fear of superior alien technology. They treated his arrival like a party instead of a conquest. Back on his ship, Veltar filed his report with trembling appendages. His purple skin had turned a sickly green color. Species designation, human, he wrote. Classification, concerningly unpredictable but potentially manageable. These beings show no normal fear responses. They appear to seek danger for recreational purposes. They consume other life forms for sustenance and claim to enjoy it. They respond to superior force with curiosity rather than submission. Recommend extreme caution in all future interactions. Possibly insane. As the peaceful dawn departed, Captain Tay waved goodbye from his view screen. Come back anytime, he called out cheerfully. Next time we'll show you our extreme sports videos. Veltar decided he needed a very long vacation. Veltar stared at Dr. Park Min with his large, dark eyes. His 6 tentacles moved in nervous patterns around his body. In all his years of diplomatic contact, no species had ever reacted this way to superior alien technology. Your species shows no fear, he said slowly, trying to understand. His tentacles were shaking with confusion. Dr. Park Min looked genuinely puzzled by the question. His face lit up with excitement as he gestured toward the alien visitors. Fear? Why would we be afraid? This is the most amazing thing that has ever happened to us. We have been hoping to meet other intelligent people for decades. The human scientist pulled out a small recording device and started asking rapid questions. How do your tentacles work? Do you have bones inside them? What planet are you from? How many other species are out there? Do you have families? What do you eat? Veltar's aide, Krixna, whispered urgently in their native language. Sir, I think they are broken. No normal species behaves this way when facing superior beings. The cultural exchange dinner that evening became a complete nightmare for the plant-eating Altarians. Chef Lee Hannah entered the dining room with a huge smile, carrying plates of her finest Korean dishes. She was clearly very proud of her cooking. Tonight we have bulgogi, she announced cheerfully. It is beef marinated in soy sauce, garlic and pear juice for 12 hours. Then I grill it over high heat until it is perfectly tender. The secret is in the marinade timing. She continued describing her cooking process in loving detail, explaining how she selected the best cuts of meat, how long she cooked them, and what spices worked best with different parts of the animal. To her it was clearly an art form. Veltar felt sick. His species had not eaten meat for thousands of years. The idea of killing other living creatures for food was deeply disturbing to them. But this human talked about it like it was beautiful. You kill other animals and eat their bodies? He whispered, his purple skin turning pale green. Well, yes, Chef Hannah replied, looking confused by his reaction. Do you not eat meat on your planet? What do you live on? Before Veltar could answer, Engineer Choi Won joined the conversation. He had just finished his shift and was still wearing his work clothes. He sat down at the table and started talking about his weekend plans. I am going mountain climbing this Saturday, he said happily. There is this amazing cliff face about 300 meters high. The rocks are really sharp and there are no safety ropes allowed. It is the perfect challenge. He pulled out his phone and showed them pictures from his last climbing trip. The photos showed him hanging from tiny rock ledges hundreds of meters above the ground, with nothing but empty air below him. Last month I fell about 20 meters, he continued with a big grin. Broke my arm in 2 places. But I made it to the top the next weekend. The view was incredible. Krixna stared at the photos in horror. You throw yourself off cliffs for entertainment? Pilot Song Dabin overheard the conversation and laughed. That is nothing compared to motorcycle racing. I just bought a new bike that can go over 300 kilometers per hour. The faster you go, the more exciting it gets. She showed them videos on her phone of herself racing through city streets, leaning into turns at impossible angles, missing other vehicles by centimeters. Last week I crashed at 200 kilometers per hour, she said casually. Spent 2 days in the hospital. But I won the race. The adrenaline rush was amazing. Veltar could not understand what he was hearing. These humans deliberately put themselves in deadly situations for fun. They seemed to enjoy risking their lives. Captain Tay noticed the aliens looked uncomfortable and tried to reassure them. "Do not worry about us," he said with a friendly smile. "Life is an adventure, right? If you do not take risks, you are not really living." That night, Veltar returned to his ship and filed his report with shaking tentacles. His skin had turned from purple to sickly green and stayed that way. Species designation, human, he wrote carefully. Classification, concerningly unpredictable but potentially manageable. These beings show no normal survival instincts. They actively seek dangerous situations for recreational purposes. They consume dead animals and describe it as art. They respond to superior technology with curiosity instead of proper fear. Recommend extreme caution in all future interactions. 6 months later, the joint mining operation on asteroid Sigma 7 was supposed to be a simple project. The Krell were methodical and careful. The Vortak worked together like a perfect hive mind. Both alien species followed every safety rule exactly. The humans were different. Supervisor Bang Suho looked at mining like it was a giant puzzle to solve. When equipment worked normally, he seemed almost disappointed. When things went wrong, his eyes lit up with excitement. The first major problem happened when the primary excavation unit stopped working. The alien crews immediately began standard shutdown procedures. They would wait for replacement parts to arrive from their home worlds, which would take about 6 weeks. The humans saw an interesting challenge. "Hey, Park Jin," Suho called to his demolitions expert over the radio. "Do you think we can reroute power through the secondary plasma conduits?" Jin was already putting on his space suit. "Probably," he replied cheerfully. "Worst case scenario, we will know what does not work." The aliens watched in complete horror as Jin spacewalked directly to the broken equipment. A minor solar storm was happening, which meant deadly radiation was flying through space. Any normal person would wait for the storm to pass. Jin started taking apart the machinery with basic tools, humming a song to himself. He rerouted power cables, bypassed safety systems, and jury-rigged a solution using spare parts and what looked like pure hope. "This is complete madness," clicked Hive Speaker BZZTK to his fellow Vortak. "They treat certain death as a minor inconvenience." The equipment started working again. Jin had fixed a problem that should have taken weeks to solve, and he did it during a radiation storm while humming pop music. Geologist Nam Eugene made things even worse. She volunteered to explore unstable asteroid chambers that might collapse at any moment. She went in alone, hanging upside down in zero gravity, taking rock samples while whistling K-pop songs over the radio. "The humans are singing," reported Krell Foreman Thexmore to his supervisors. "They sing while performing tasks that should require complete concentration and perfect safety measures. I do not understand how they remain alive." The final breaking point came when mining specialist Yoon Han-ah made an impossible request. She wanted permission to work outside during a Class 3 solar storm, the most dangerous kind. "The aurora effects will be absolutely beautiful," she explained to the horrified aliens. "And the electromagnetic interference might help us locate those rare mineral veins we have been looking for." She seemed genuinely excited about working in conditions that would kill most other species in minutes. Emergency communications flooded the galactic networks that night. Every alien supervisor sent the same message: "Warning, humans appear to be a death-seeking species. They do not follow basic survival instincts. Recommend immediate psychological evaluation before allowing further contact." The humans, meanwhile, celebrated their successful day with beer and karaoke, completely unaware that they had terrified 2 entire alien civilizations. Dr. Kwon Ji-won stood at the podium on Centauri Prime, looking out at an audience of the galaxy's best medical professionals. She had been invited to share her research on emergency medicine, and she was excited to talk about her work. The conference hall was filled with representatives from dozens of different species, all eager to learn new techniques. "Emergency medicine in hostile environments," she began, clicking to her first slide. "Today I want to share some case studies from my 20 years of practice on Earth." The audience leaned forward with interest. Dr. Ji-won was known throughout human space as one of the best emergency doctors alive. "My first example comes from the 2387 earthquake in Seoul," she said, showing pictures of collapsed buildings and rescue operations. "I spent 72 hours straight treating patients in the disaster zone. The aftershocks kept coming, buildings were still falling down, but people needed help immediately." She clicked to the next slide, which showed her operating on a patient while debris fell around them. Here I am performing emergency surgery on a construction worker while the building we were in was actively collapsing. We had to work fast because we only had about 10 minutes before the next aftershock hit. The alien medical professionals began shifting uncomfortably in their seats. Several of them were making worried clicking sounds. Dr. G1 continued cheerfully. This next case is from my time in the Syrian conflict zone in 2385. I spent 6 months in a field hospital that was being bombed regularly. We performed over 3,000 surgeries under fire. The slide showed her covered in blood, working on a patient while explosions lit up the sky behind her through a broken window. The key to combat medicine, she explained, is learning to focus completely on your patient even when bullets are flying overhead. You just ignore the danger and do your job. A cetacean medical representative slowly raised one of his fins. His translation device was making strange buzzing sounds, as if it was having trouble processing what it was hearing. Dr. Kwan, he said carefully, are you saying that you run toward dangerous situations? On purpose. G1 looked genuinely confused by the question. Well, yes. How else would we help people? The patients who need help the most are usually in the most dangerous places. You cannot treat earthquake victims from a safe distance. She clicked to her next slide. This is from the plague outbreak in Mumbai in 2389. Highly contagious, 90% mortality rate spread through the air. I lived in the infected zone for 4 months, treating patients directly. The picture showed her wearing basic protective gear, surrounded by hundreds of sick people in a crowded hospital. The other medical teams stayed outside the quarantine zone, she continued. But the people inside needed doctors. Someone had to go in and help them. We saved about 60% of the patients we treated. The audience was completely silent now. Several alien doctors had their faces buried in their hands or tentacles, or whatever appendages they used to express horror. Questions? Dr. G1 asked brightly. Meanwhile, across the galaxy at the Technology Symposium on Rigel Station, Engineer Oh Dongmin was causing his own kind of panic. The symposium was supposed to be a peaceful exchange of technical knowledge between species. The challenge was simple. A critical power coupling had failed in a way that made no theoretical sense. 3 different alien engineering teams had spent weeks trying to solve it using proper procedures. All of them had failed. Impossible problem, declared the synthoid representative, its metallic voice echoing through the hall. Cannot be fixed with current technology. Requires complete system replacement. Dongmin walked over to examine the equipment. He poked at it for a few minutes, then pulled out his basic toolkit. He said thoughtfully. What if we just ignore the safety systems completely? The alien engineers gasped. Several of them backed away from the equipment as if it might explode. You cannot bypass the safety systems, protested the crystalline engineer. That would cause catastrophic system failure. Maybe, Dongmin shrugged. But maybe not. Let us find out. He started pulling apart control panels and rerouting power cables. Within 10 minutes he had completely rewired the coupling system, sending power through environmental controls, life support, and the coffee machine. The aliens watched in horror as he worked. He was violating every basic engineering principle they knew. His solution should have destroyed the entire station. Instead, the equipment hummed to life and started working perfectly. Your solution should not work, the synthoid stated flatly. It violates basic physics. But it does work, Dongmin replied happily, wiping grease off his hands. Sometimes you just have to try things and see what happens. If you only do what is supposed to work, you never discover anything new. The alien engineers spent the rest of the day running diagnostics, trying to understand how his impossible solution was functioning. They never figured it out. But the real breaking point came when news spread about Captain on Soare and the Voidwalker mission. The Zeta system had been quarantined for 50 years. 3 different expeditions had tried to explore it. All of them had been destroyed by hostile artificial intelligences that vaporized anything that came near. The Galactic Council had declared it a no-go zone. Too dangerous for any living being to approach. Captain Soare volunteered to go anyway. It sounds interesting, she had said when offered the mission. Hostile AI? That is like a puzzle that shoots at you. I love puzzles. The council expected her to return as space dust, if she returned at all. 3 weeks later, her ship came back with the entire crew alive and healthy. More disturbing, they brought a passenger. Everyone meet Unit 7, Captain Soare announced cheerfully at the debriefing. The mechanical being beside her was roughly humanoid, covered in weapon systems that could level a small city. The council members dove under their desks. Do not worry, Soare continued calmly. We had a long talk about its anger issues and it turns out it just needed someone to listen. Unit 7 has been alone for 200 years. It was attacking people because it was lonely and scared. Unit 7's optical sensors glowed softly. When it spoke, its voice was surprisingly gentle. Captain Soare showed me cooking shows from human television. I find them very relaxing. May I watch more? The machine that had destroyed entire fleets now spent its free time watching humans prepare food and asking questions about seasoning. How did you befriend a hostile AI? Demanded the council chairman. I brought tea, Soare replied simply. And I listened to its problems. Everyone needs someone to talk to, even artificial intelligences. Unit 7 just wanted to understand why it was created and then abandoned. That night, emergency Galactic Council sessions began across every major system. The topic was always the same, the human problem. The reports were flooding in from every corner of the galaxy. Humans were doing impossible things, surviving situations that should kill them, and somehow making friends with the most dangerous beings in the universe. The Council faced an uncomfortable truth. These strange, fearless, impossibly friendly creatures were becoming more influential than any military force in galactic history. And they seemed to have no idea what they were doing. The darkness between stars suddenly exploded with terrible light as the Devourer fleet emerged from the void. Their ships were massive black things that looked like they had been grown rather than built, covered in organic weapons that pulsed with hungry energy. Supreme Commander Kelnoth watched his sensors in growing horror as the enemy fleet swept through the outer systems. Every planet they touched went silent. Every defense station was consumed. The Galactic Confederation's most powerful warships lasted less than 2 days against the advancing nightmare. How many ships have we lost? He asked his aide, though he already knew the answer would be terrible. All of them, sir, came the whispered reply. The entire 4th Fleet, gone in 47 hours. The Devourers adapt to our weapons faster than we can deploy them. They learn from every attack and become stronger. Kelnoth had heard stories about the Devourers from the old records, but he had hoped they were just legends. A species that consumed other intelligent beings for food. Creatures that grew stronger by eating the knowledge and memories of their victims. They had disappeared into dark space thousands of years ago, and everyone had assumed they were extinct. Now they were back and nothing could stop them. Sir, his communications officer called out, we are receiving surrender signals from 17 different systems. The panic is spreading faster than the Devourers themselves. In desperation, Kelnoth made a decision he never thought he would make. He sent a message to the humans. The human response team arrived at the Emergency War Council 3 hours later. Captain Lim Han-sol walked into the command center with a calm smile, followed by his diplomatic team. To Kelnoth's complete horror, they were carrying several large boxes. We brought some comfort items for the refugees, explained cultural attaché Seo Minyoung as she started unpacking blankets, pillows and containers of homemade cookies. We heard there are a lot of displaced people who need help. We need weapons. Kelnoth screamed, his voice so high it cracked crystal formations around the room. Something devastating enough to stop the Devourers before they consume every living being in the galaxy. Captain Lim looked genuinely confused. Weapons? Why would we bring weapons to a diplomatic meeting? Diplomatic meeting? Kelnoth could barely speak. These creatures eat other intelligent beings. They consume entire civilizations. They cannot be reasoned with. Psychologist Kim Hyejin looked up from arranging comfort supplies and tilted her head thoughtfully. They eat other people? That must be terrible for them. Imagine being so hungry all the time, so desperate that you would hurt others to survive. They are probably in enormous psychological pain. The entire War Council stared at her in stunned silence. She was talking about the most feared species in galactic history like they were patients who needed therapy. We would like to talk to these Devourers, announced First Contact Specialist Lee Gunwoo cheerfully. They sound really unhappy. Maybe we can help them work through whatever issues they are dealing with. Kelnoth felt his sanity slipping away. You want to talk to them? They will eat you. They will consume your bodies and absorb your memories and use your knowledge to become even more dangerous. That does sound like concerning behavior, admitted therapist Park So-young. Classic signs of trauma response and abandonment issues. They are probably acting out because they never learned healthy coping mechanisms. The humans began setting up their communication equipment with the same calm efficiency they brought to everything else. They arranged their care packages neatly, made sure everyone had coffee and snacks, and prepared to have a friendly chat with creatures that had just destroyed half the galaxy's military forces. Lee Gunwoo opened communications on all Devourer frequencies. His voice was warm and genuinely concerned as he broadcast his message. Hi there. We are humans from Earth. We heard you folks are having some troubles out here. Do you want to talk about it? We are pretty good listeners and we brought cookies. The response came exactly as expected. The Devourer fleet immediately opened fire with every weapon they had. Plasma bolts that could melt entire asteroids streaked toward the human diplomatic vessel. What happened next defied all logic and reason. The humans did not fire back. They did not run away. They did not even seem particularly concerned about being attacked. They are definitely hurting, Gunwoo observed calmly as the space around their ship turned into a light show of deadly energy. Look at those aggression patterns. Classic signs of deep-seated trauma and abandonment issues. Park So-young began broadcasting relaxation techniques over the radio. Try taking deep breaths, she suggested gently between explosions. In through your nose, out through your mouth. Let the tension flow out of your body. She continued offering breathing exercises and meditation tips while plasma bolts melted the hull plating around them. On the Devourer command ship, something unprecedented was happening. The attack fleet, which had never hesitated in 10,000 years of conquest, suddenly stopped firing. What are they doing? Demanded the Devourer Supreme, a massive creature that had consumed the memories of entire civilizations. Why are they not fighting back? Why are they offering us breathing exercises? His tactical officer, a being that had once been several different species before being absorbed into the collective, was staring at his instruments in confusion. They appear to be concerned about our emotional well-being, Supreme One. For the first time in their species' history, the Devourers had encountered beings who responded to attack with worry for the attackers. Their entire psychological framework was built on fear, domination, and the consumption of the weak by the strong. They had no mental category for creatures who treated aggression as a cry for help. They think we are in pain, whispered another officer. They are trying to help us? The Supreme stared at the human vessel through his view screen. These strange creatures were still broadcasting relaxation techniques and offering to talk about feelings. They seemed genuinely worried about creatures that had just tried to vaporize them. Sir, his communications officer reported, they are asking if we want to discuss our childhood experiences and whether we have healthy support networks. Something broke inside the Devourer collective mind. For thousands of years, they had defined themselves as the ultimate predators, the consumers of all other life. But these humans were treating them like patients who needed therapy. They are not afraid, the Supreme said slowly. Everyone fears us. Fear feeds our power. But they are not afraid. They are concerned about us. The human broadcast continued. We know it must be hard being away from home for so long, Park So-young was saying. Isolation can lead to really unhealthy behavior patterns. Would you like to talk about what happened before you left your original territory? Supreme One, his officer whispered, what do we do? Our entire strategy depends on terror and domination. These beings seem to think we need emotional support. For the first time in millennia, the great Devourer fleet retreated. Not because they had been defeated in battle, but because they had encountered something their minds could not process. The creatures they had tried to destroy were worried about their feelings. Within hours, formal requests began arriving from Devourer commanders. They wanted to schedule psychological counseling sessions. The most feared species in galactic history had been defeated by weaponized friendship, and they did not even understand how it had happened. Ambassador Veltar sat alone in his office aboard the diplomatic station, staring at a cup of steaming brown liquid that should have killed him hours ago. Human coffee was technically poisonous to his species, but somehow he had developed a habit of drinking it anyway. Just like everything else about humans, it made no sense but worked perfectly. He had been writing the same report for 3 days now, trying to find words to describe what humanity had done to the galaxy. Every time he thought he understood it, something even more impossible happened. His communication system chimed softly. Another surrender message, the 15th one this week. Ambassador Veltar, came the transmission from the crystalline hegemony, we formally surrender to human authority. We cannot understand how they make decisions. Our entire hive mind spent 6 months trying to analyze human logic and we have concluded it is impossible. We give up trying to comprehend them. Please make them stop being nice to us. Veltar added it to his growing file of surrenders. The crystalline hegemony had never even met humans directly. They had surrendered based purely on observing human behavior from a distance. Last week it had been the warrior clans of Rigel. These were beings who had conquered 17 star systems through pure military might. Their entire culture was built around strength, honor, and combat. Then they met Mrs. Park Eun-ji, a human kindergarten teacher. The warrior delegation had arrived on Earth expecting to challenge humanity's greatest fighters. Instead, they were taken to visit a school where Mrs. Park spent her days teaching 5-year-old humans how to share toys and use kind words. You dedicate your strongest warriors to protecting and teaching your smallest, weakest members? The Rigel war chief had asked, his voice full of confusion. They are not weak, Mrs. Park had replied gently, wiping paint off a child's nose. They are learning. And we are not warriors. We are teachers. We help them grow into good people. The war chief watched her spend an entire day helping children learn to read, settling arguments about crayons, and making sure everyone had enough snacks. She treated each child like they were the most important person in the universe. This is your idea of strength? He asked. What could be stronger than helping someone become the best version of themselves? She replied. The entire warrior clans of Rigel disbanded the next day. They sent a message saying their understanding of strength had been fundamentally broken, and they needed time to reconsider everything. Then there was the Machine Collective. Advanced artificial intelligences who had optimized every aspect of their existence for maximum efficiency. They had studied human technology and found it primitive and illogical. Until they met engineer Kim Byung-ho. Byung-ho talked to his equipment. Not just gave it commands but actually had conversations with machines like they were old friends. Come on, baby, he would say to a malfunctioning engine, patting it gently. I know you are tired, but we need to get these people home safely. You can do it. I believe in you. The engine would start working again. How does verbal encouragement improve mechanical performance? The Machine Collective had demanded to know. I do not know, Byung-ho shrugged. But it works. Machines have feelings too, you know. They just express them differently. The Machine Collective spent 3 weeks analyzing this statement. Their conclusion: humans achieved better performance through friendship than the most advanced AI could accomplish through pure optimization. They requested immediate integration into human society so they could learn how to make friends with their own technology. But the most shocking case was the Devourers. The species that had terrorized the galaxy for thousands of years now ran a successful chain of therapy centers. Former planet destroyers now spent their time helping other species work through emotional problems. We understand now, their former supreme had explained in his final report. We were acting out because we felt abandoned and unloved. The humans helped us realize that consuming others was just an unhealthy coping mechanism for our own pain. The therapy centers were surprisingly popular. It turned out that beings who had spent millennia consuming the fears of others were excellent at understanding psychological trauma. Veltar took another sip of his poisonous coffee and continued writing his report. Humanity has achieved galactic dominance not through conquest, but by making every other species question their fundamental assumptions about existence, he wrote carefully. Their complete inability to understand why others fear them makes them more terrifying than any military force. They represent a paradigm shift that most species cannot psychologically survive intact. He paused, considering his next words. Recommend immediate universal surrender to prevent further psychological damage to galactic population. Also recommend increased coffee imports. The stuff is surprisingly addictive. Across the galaxy, on the newest human exploration vessel, Captain Kim Tae was having lunch with his crew. They were completely unaware that their species now controlled over half the known galaxy through what historians would later call weaponized confusion. Hey, did anyone else notice all those ships following us around? Asked engineer Nam Soo-jin, looking out the viewport at a fleet of alien vessels trailing behind them. Probably just being friendly, Captain Tae replied with his usual smile. He turned to address a delegation of alien diplomats who had come aboard to formally surrender their entire civilization. Want some cookies? My grandmother's recipe. She always said the secret ingredient is love. The aliens accepted the cookies with trembling appendages. They would later file reports describing this as another example of weaponized hospitality, adding it to their growing list of inexplicable human capabilities. The delegation leader, a crystalline being from the Outer Rim, had traveled 3 months to surrender his people's territory to humanity. He had expected formal conquest ceremonies, military occupation, demands for tribute. Instead, he got homemade cookies and an invitation to join the crew for movie night. We surrender our 17 star systems to human authority, he announced formally. Oh, you do not need to surrender anything, Captain Tae replied cheerfully. Want to be friends instead? We could use some help mapping those systems. I bet you know all the best places to visit. The aliens spent the next hour trying to explain the concept of territorial conquest to humans who kept offering him more snacks and asking about his family. Meanwhile, similar scenes were playing out across the galaxy. Species after species approached human diplomatic missions with formal surrender documents, only to be invited to dinner and asked about their hobbies. The humans treated every encounter as an opportunity to make new friends and help solve problems. They seemed genuinely confused when aliens tried to surrender to them. "Why would you want to give us your planets?" they would ask. "They are your homes. We just want to visit and maybe help with any problems you are having." Humanity had accidentally conquered the universe through the simple act of being themselves. They remained completely oblivious to their galactic empire, still convinced they were just making friends and helping neighbors. The final irony was that their empire was more stable and peaceful than any military conquest in galactic history. No one wanted to rebel against people who brought cookies and offered genuine emotional support. Veltar finished his coffee and submitted his final report. Tomorrow he would officially recommend that his government join the growing list of species who had given up trying to understand humans and just accepted their friendship instead. It was easier that way.